And hello, everybody. Welcome to WD Carousel a Podcast. My name's Ian.
And I'm Crystal.
And we're going to talk about a ride. Because we haven't done just like a straight ride since a couple
Well, we
of
did
things.
Spaceship Earth.
We did Spaceship Earth. That wasn't that long ago,
But this is the first
old ride. So this is not abandoned, but it's of yesteryear.
It is a ride that is no longer in existence.
Yes.
But is referenced far and wide throughout Epcot.
And throughout Disney parks in general, which is an interesting thing. So anyway, we're talking about Horizons, and
I'm sure you saw the title.
Yes. And Horizons is one of those rides where I always wanted to talk about this one on the podcast. But
I think we've brought it up like 4 times in different episodes.
But it kind of terrifies me because there's not that many rides in Disney that have quite as much like fanatical fandom as Horizons.
This is a big guy to start these off with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this and I would say The Adventures of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. That's going to be right up there too, with the crazy cult-like following.
Yeah. But it's just really with Horizons, it was one of those that didn't last a super long time. Mm-hmm. It was like less than 20 years that it was active, and it was very unique and had pioneered a lot of different things in Epcot, and it kind of died too early. I think is the feeling that a lot of people had. And I think that one thing that I think is important for us right away is it's widely considered to be Carousel of Progress, the sequel.
Agreed.
And that's because it was a GE sponsorship, and it was all about, instead of being like Carousel of Progress being what everything was and leading up to now, Horizons was literally going into the future. So I think let's start with just like a little like kind of history of the attraction and how it came to be and its timeline.
Before we
it's
get
sort of
quite
interesting.
there, I want to set the stage, if you will, a little bit for Epcot, because remember, this is the opening of Epcot. This is the beginning years of Epcot, when Epcot was all about education. It was all about helping people learn and grow. It wasn't just about the thrill and the entertainment. Yes, they had some entertainment in there, but it was primarily an education-based park.
Yeah.
And now when you go to Epcot, not to bash Epcot because we love Epcot.
Absolutely.
But it has definitely changed its focus.
Yes.
From being a place where you could go and explore the body or explore the ocean or explore communications history.
Your imagination.
All of those things. It had to do with understanding the world and teaching us in a way that was entertaining. And so since Epcot's really gotten away from that, it's hard to think nowadays about how that was back then. It was a completely different future world.
Right.
It was a completely different park in the beginning.
Right, and that was the kind of the whole thing with, and we could do an entire episode on the history of Epcot, and we probably will, as
eventually.
Ian frantically makes note. But the idea was there were 2 different parks that Disney had tried to create that ended up being one. There was Epcot, which was derived from the Walt Disney Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. Every person comes out tired. That was the original, like the future, all that kind of stuff. The model city. That got converted into what we see in Future World a lot now with
the utopian
with lots of
society.
Different the pavilions and all that kind of. That was the original concept.
And then they combined it with the World Fair.
Yeah, the World Showcase was going to be its own separate
World's Fair.
Right, and then they just stuck them together. At some point, somebody was just like, wait a second, they just pushed the 2 models together, and then they just made it into one.
And congrats, there was Epcot.
And there was Epcot, and it's absolutely one of my favorite parks, but that's...
Yeah, so Horizons is one of the beginning attractions where it really had to focus on education and,
corporate sponsorships and all that kind of stuff.
There's still corporate sponsorships.
Yeah, not even, well, a lot of them don't anymore. It's weird. But, so, interesting thing, it is one of the early attractions, however, it was not opening day.
Yes, it was not opening day.
And I have notes because I will forget things. The idea... So GE and Disney actually, once again, so we mentioned Carousel of Progress earlier, came back again to do something for sponsoring with Epcot. and so they decided the idea of kind of going into the future was something that they had talked about really early on. It was actually an idea from one of the GE executives. It was Jack Walsh and
Nice.
the other one. So they actually had a lot of the ideas themselves. So they started working on that in like 1979, early on, and then
Still pre-Epcot actually being in existence.
Right. But it was a huge attraction, to the point where it got so big that they were told they had to cut 10 million during development. They're like, you need to just downsize it about 10 million. So the ride was actually shorter by about 600 feet than it would have been without that. But even still, it was still a pretty groundbreaking attraction, especially for being an Omnimover based attraction. So it had a lot going on just for the fact that it was an Omnimover. So the idea was, 1982, Epcot opens, and at this point, there was no... they already had Horizons in the literature and everything, because it was like Spaceship Earth. Like, it was a huge attraction, but it just wasn't done yet. So they said it opened on October 1st of 82, and they said this ride's going to open in exactly 1 year, and believe it or not, it did. It opened exactly 1 year later in 1983 on October 1st. So it was, it ran for quite a while, but there's lots of speculation as to what happens in what order, but it ran from 1983 to 1993. It was still running, but GE's contract expired, and they did not renew it.
Which happens a lot with a lot of the different rides.
Right.
And a lot of different attractions.
And usually in these situations, somebody else comes along.
Picks it up.
Yeah, like with, I don't remember originally who had Spaceship Earth, but then Siemens had it. Bell, yep. So then Siemens had it. It's just there's almost always someone that comes along. Recently, in the last 5 to 10 years, it's been less common. A lot of people are expiring, and no one's coming in to take it over. So there's a lot of sponsorless pavilions and attractions in Disney. But either way, GE's contract expires, and they just bless you.
Excuse me.
Is that the first sneeze on the show?
I think so.
I think it was. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, milestones.
Yeah, milestones. So 93, the contract expires, and they were basically like, okay, we're done, and we're out. And you would expect Disney to be like, okay, cool, we'll just find somebody else who's going to run the ride. And so that's what they thought was going to happen at first. They removed all the references to GE, signage went away, all the dialogue that had GE in it in the attraction was pulled pretty much within the month or so after.
Which is what you saw also for their other corresponding ride, Carousel of
Progress.
Yep. Progress. I almost said podcast.
I know, it's really easy to do.
So easy. There's a few things that have been left in Carousel of Progress just because you can't really get rid of all of the labels on the equipment, but yeah, I mean, as soon as the sponsorship's done,
they pull them real quick.
Out.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like, that's their money. They're like, we're done. We're out.
No free advertisement for you.
Exactly. So it was only a month or two after that expires. Then in 94, so late 1994, was when they first closed the attraction. They just closed it, and they didn't, of course, since it's Disney, no reasons are cited. People don't really know what's going on, and it's closed for a while. But, weirdly, they reopened it again temporarily during a peak year. So, World of Motion was closed while they were converting it to Test Track. And during this time, Horizons was closed, World of Motion was closed. It was like Spaceship Earth and Imagination. Like all the Imagination stuff.
Yeah, Journey into Imagination.
That was it.
Living with the Land, the Seas.
Yep.
I want to say even Energy was still open.
Yep.
Yeah.
But there might have been one more that wasn't. Something else was closed at the same time.
Wasn't that Mission Space?
No, that was what it turned into. I can't remember what it was. Anyway,
yeah.
There was something else that it turned into. Anyway, so there was another one. There was very few things available for peak season for Disney, and what they ended up doing was
they pulled
opening.
They pulled a River Country.
Yep, they pulled a River Country. They opened it back up. It seems like it's kind of an ongoing thing. 1999 for let's see, 95 I should say. It was reopened temporarily. And it actually ran for a while. It ran until on and off, just sporadically during peak hours until 99. So there was a while where it just kind of ran in this weird, like, kind of limbo state.
It would suck to want to go on the ride during that time and then get there and then just be like, oh yeah, it's not open this time of year.
You just never know when it's going to be open. So
And that was before, you had the My Experience app to be able to keep track of what was down, what was open.
There's actually a ride this is happening with this very day, and that is Stitch's Great Escape.
That is true.
They're doing
Although
exactly the same thing.
they've moved it to character meet and greets.
Yes, they are doing that
So
now.
they have officially on that one.
They've actually officially closed the ride, okay.
And they've just converted it into a character
Carousel
meet
meet
and
and
greet.
greet. Okay. So anyway, in December of or January of '99, it runs for the very last time and it's closed and it does not reopen. And then they said though on October, so quite like 10 months later, there were some people that went through it, like press people, like journalists, like went and got to ride it randomly for some reason. And so they ran it, and they said it was still intact at this point. But by the time they got to March of 2000, people started to see them clearing out internal components from the building, the show building. And then at this point, they also, then not long after that, by like between July and September of 2000, the whole building was demolished, which had never happened before on a Disney property. They actually had never literally stripped a building down and then demolished it down to nothing and started
they
over.
rebuild inside of the show building instead of
rebuilding it.
Because
So
it's more cost effective to keep the building.
absolutely. So it was, people were like, and the Disney cited it as a, how did they say it? They said the space of the building for the new attraction was going to be too big, which is a outright lie, because if you go on to the satellite imaging, which is not that hard to do, Disney, the Mission Space site is smaller than the original Horizons show building space. So that is not true. It's just simply not true. So we don't know. There might be more to it than we don't see, but something else is at play, because they.
I mean, it could have been something to do with the structure, and they would have had to correct it anyway, so it's easier just to do a tear down.
So it's interesting you bring that up, because that's kind of the big speculation. Currently, the prevailing theory is that there was a huge structural problem in the building, underneath the building. There was like a kind of sinkhole or something had happened subterranean underneath the building, and it was starting to have just really huge consequences structurally for the building.
Now, I know Epcot is not as prevalent with the underground
It does
tunnels.
not, it doesn't have the utilidor system.
It does have some.
Right.
But I don't think the utilidors went underneath that building.
No.
Memory serves.
Yeah, it was only certain areas had it. I think more of the World Showcase areas.
Yeah.
So it was just straight to standard building, just on ground. So at this point, the prevailing theory is definitely that was the problem. Disney probably just was like, we can't do this. Apparently there might have been a roof problem. It was leaking.
Some
stuff. It's a wacky looking building. It was this very angular spaceship kind of 80s.
It was awesome.
It was a great looking building.
It was so stereotypically 80s future aesthetic.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Just like the cheesy geometric shapes and
It was just it looked just and the all the show I'm trying to think, the media, the press media and everything for it, like all the promotional stuff was just awesome. Like it's just amazing. It's like all this like travel to the future, all this kind of stuff, and it had like a silhouette of the I mean, it's just awesome stuff. So that's kind of the prevailing theory. Of course, Disney will never confirm this, but that's likely what happened. But they literally tore it down, and some components, there was like a hovercraft thing, and all these little props that were very iconic to the ride, and they moved them. The little hovercraft thing is actually in Disneyland Paris.
Oh, nice.
So for whatever reason, that's where it went. And so that was one thing. There's lots of little kind of hints at it and little tributes to it throughout.
We brought up the homage in Spaceship Earth when you were coming down from the top of the show building, where you have the pick your future situation.
Yes.
And a lot of that was a nod to Horizons.
To Horizons, yep. And the middle of some prop stuff in Mission Space, the replacement ride, there's lots of little emblems with the original Horizons logo in it. It's all over, and there's nods to it all over in that attraction. And there's a quote from somebody that right after Mission Space opened, they were wearing a Horizons like fan T-shirt, and they walked out, and the cast member says, "A nice T-shirt. Did you see all the little nods to it in the thing?" And the person said, she's like, "Yeah, I miss my Horizons though." And the cast member just goes, "Me too." You know? So it was charming. Now maybe we could talk a little bit about the ride experience.
Yes.
I've never ridden it. I would have been old enough to ride it, but I just think timing wise, I never was there when it was open.
Mm-hmm. I had gone to Disney, I remember, in like 98. But I think it was one of the times when the show building was down.
Yeah. So it was hard. It was in the time that I would have been going to Disney earlier in my life. It would have been really hard to get in and see it. So that's too bad. But the thing that was interesting though is
because there are actual ride videos that you can see on YouTube. So if you feel like you are missing out on this piece of Epcot culture, you can definitely go and search it and find the ride videos there.
Absolutely. And there's even a couple of like fairly decent ones. There was a couple. Somebody brought in a high 8 camera, which did fairly well for the time. Like you can't expect a lot more out of like 1992 or something. So it was like the height of the GE era, and I highly recommend that. Could you just
imagine this big, huge camcorder while you're going through the ride?
It's just unbelievable to me, but it worked.
I'm surprised the cast members let them on with it.
I'm glad they did it.
I know, me too.
Yeah, maybe they knew something.
Posterity.
It is, and so the ride is interesting because it combines Omnidome, like IMAX technology, and standard diorama, audio animatronic style kind of stuff. So you get this really amazing thing where you first start out in these big Omnidome kind of things where it tips you and you look through and you're going through and getting up to the point where they narrate you going up to the 21st century. That was the big thing was, we're going to send you to the 21st century because at this point, this is all the 20th century, which is very weird to me to think about. But, I was alive then, but it's just weird to think about now that was like
yes, but it wasn't really your conscious years yet.
Well, kind of. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. But the thing is, the ride was this whole concept was to send you through to the future and see like what was going to happen, and they followed a family, kind of like Carousel Progress. I had to catch myself, and. And that would guide you through the kind of the future of the future of what could happen technology wise, and the family, FaceTiming each other and doing all this stuff from the perspective of the 80s and how cool that would have been at the time. So that was pretty amazing to see. And then so that was after you went to the original Omnidome kind of attraction thing to see all this stuff, and then you go through this whole stuff following the different places. They go to the moon. Then they go to space. They go to a desert kind of plantation area where they like kind of like terraformed the desert on deep sea, underwater, like all these different kinds of places. They actually reference some of this stuff in Mission. Oh boy. I can't think of the name of the. Oh my gosh, Space Mountain. They actually have like you can see like the future area stuff at the very end. They kind of do that. It's very similar to that, but they kind of go all in on that, and it's really neat. It's a really neat setup. And at the end, the voice will say, "Please take a look at blah 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 blah, and choose your future." Everyone vote, and the majority wins, and we'll play that one. So you go through. Everyone sets what they want to watch, and whatever one is the majority rule will actually be the one that you see. Played on the big Omnimax thing. And apparently these Omnimax videos, the miniatures they used to create these Omnimax videos were the largest miniatures ever made up to that point of their type.
The largest miniatures sounds contradictory.
It does, but it just gives you an idea how big they were, because they were the largest miniatures. So, the cat is here.
Sorry.
It's a thing. But, so it was a very interesting concept for a ride, and had a lot of really neat things going for it. The ultimate demise, again, kind of came down to structural failure, The loss was sponsored with GE, so they didn't feel like they wanted to make the money for it. It ended up being that, so the future of the ride then, Compaq, which doesn't even exist anymore as a company, said they wanted to develop a new space-themed future ride for that location. So then the ideas behind Mission Space started to get set up and started to kind of form on the base level. I think Compaq got bought by HP at that point, and then it became an HP-sponsored attraction, and then that's what opened in 2003 on the same site. So that's basically what ended up happening, and Mission Space is an amazing and interesting ride in its own right, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point.
Yes,
but
as long as you are not someone who is A, claustrophobic, or B, easily prone to motion sickness.
Right.
But that's another
topic. And very interesting technology involved in that particular ride. But I think it's a really good attraction, and I'm glad it's there, and I like that it's not specific to a specific intellectual property. It's just its own unique thing. I do like that.
Yes.
It's too bad though that it had to replace Horizons, which I wish I would have been able to experience.
The cult following for Horizons is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is at this point in time. There's a cult following.
There's a cult following behind it, and and I can't fault them for it. It sounds like a really neat ride, and I know that I'm missing all sorts of stuff, and I'm not doing it the justice that it deserves because I am not part of that cult fandom. But I'm also a huge park nerd, so it's something that I'd like to
And you are especially abandoned. Places history buff.
Yeah.
So this is where, this is kind of your favorite, one of your favorite areas to dig your teeth into and find more research on.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a thing that I really like, and I want to do more of these, and there's so many of these to talk about. And
there's such a big time period with Disney, and multiple parks, multiple locations throughout the world, multiple reincarnations of the same thought, or stylizations, and it's going to be fun to talk about. It's going to be fun to explore.
Yes, absolutely. It's one that we haven't gotten into as much, and I'm excited to continue. And maybe Horizons was the wrong one to start with, but I'm excited.
Doesn't mean we can't revisit it in a year.
Exactly. So I am very much looking forward to doing some more of these, and I think they're just absolutely fascinating.
Yes.
So, anyway, that rambled, but I think it was fun. Anyway,
I liked it.
Yeah, it was good.
It was good enough for me.
That's all that matters.
And on that note, I think we should wrap it up.
I think so.
So this has been WD Carousel of Podcast. My name's Crystal.
And I'm Ian.
And I hope you all have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Beautiful
Bye, everyone.
Tomorrow, just a dream away.